Hello, my friend. The sun was just rising over the hills of Moab, casting golden streaks across the dry, dusty land. Moses stood on a small ridge, looking down at the thousands of Israelites gathered before him. Their faces, lined with worry, hope, and exhaustion, reflected years of wandering through deserts, mountains, and valleys. The murmurs of the crowd faded as he lifted his hand, and a hush fell over the people. "My friends," Moses began, his voice steady but warm, "look around you. Do you see the land beyond the Jordan? That is the land God promised to our fathers. A land flowing with milk and honey. And yet here we stand, on the edge of what seems like forever." He paused, memories of the past decades flooding his mind. He remembered the fear in their eyes when they left Egypt, the bitter tears at the Red Sea, the complaints that echoed through the wilderness, and the moments when they forgot God's presence. Yet, every time, he had guided them. "Remember the rivers you crossed," Moses continued, "the battles you faced, and the nights when we had no food or water. God did not abandon us. He spoke through pillars of fire, clouds of guidance, and the quiet whispers in your hearts." A young boy in the crowd tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Mama, did God really save us from the giants?" she whispered. The mother smiled, brushing the boy's dusty hair from his forehead. "Yes, my son. God's hand has always been with us. He walked with Moses, and he walks with us still." Moses' gaze softened as he saw the faces of the elders, some who had journeyed since Egypt, some born in the wilderness. He knew many would not enter the promised land, yet their faith, their perseverance, their struggles, they would shape the generations to come. "My people," Moses said, his voice rising with both grief and hope, "we have learned much. We have seen miracles beyond understanding. We have learned to trust God not only with our strength but with our hearts. And now, as you prepare to cross into a new life, remember this. God's love is as constant as the stars above, and his guidance will never leave you, even in the darkest nights." He let the silence stretch, allowing the weight of the journey to settle in each heart. Around him, children fidgeted, elders bowed their heads, and somewhere in the distance, a camel shifted its feet, the sound echoing like a heartbeat across the hills. "This," Moses whispered, almost to himself, "is not the end of wandering. It is the beginning of living in his promises." And with that, the people felt it, the quiet thrill of hope, the tug of faith, and the deep, unshakable knowledge that though the path had been long, God had never left them. The crowd settled after the morning sun had fully risen, casting a warm glow across the hills. Moses stood tall, his eyes scanning the faces before him. He knew that what he was about to speak would shape generations, yet he wanted it to feel alive, not just rules on a scroll, but guidance for their hearts. "My people," he began, "God has given us more than laws. He has given us a way to live, a way to honor him and each other. These commandments are not burdens. They are the lifeblood of our community, the wisdom of those who came before us, and the compass for those who will follow." He knelt and traced a line in the dust with his staff. "Look here. Love God with all your heart. Let this guide your choices, your words, your actions. When we love him, we naturally love one another. That is the heart of every law I will teach you." A young woman in the crowd whispered to her neighbor, "Does that mean even when we are angry, we should try to forgive?" Her neighbor nodded, eyes glistening. "Yes, that's exactly it. The laws aren't just about punishment. They're about learning to live rightly, with love and care." Moses smiled. "Remember, every command is a story, every rule a promise. When you honor your parents, you honor the generations before you. When you help your neighbor, you honor God. When you speak truth, you honor your own soul." He paused, letting his words sink in. The people murmured among themselves, seeing the commandments not as distant instructions, but as lifelines connecting them to God, to each other, and to the generations yet to come. "Keep these words close, treasure them in your hearts, and teach them to your children," Moses said softly. "For in them we find life, justice, and peace." And in following them, we walk in God's light, even in the darkest moments of the wilderness. And with that, the people felt a deep warmth, as if the sun itself had settled over them, not just on the hills, but in their hearts. The laws were no longer distant. They were alive, breathing, and guiding every step of their journey. The wind blew softly across the Moab plains, stirring the dust at the feet of the Israelites. Moses' voice carried over the crowd, calm but firm, as he addressed them. "My people," he said, "I must speak honestly. The path ahead is not without danger. If you turn from God's ways, if your hearts grow cold or your eyes wander after other gods, you will face consequences. Not because God wishes to punish, but because every choice has its weight." An elder stepped forward, leaning on his staff. "Moses, we have seen miracles, yet fear still finds us. How can we be certain we will not falter?" Moses' gaze softened. "It is not certainty you are given, but guidance. You will stumble and you may fall, but each time you return to God, your faith grows stronger. Every warning is an invitation to choose wisely." A young boy whispered to his sister, "Does that mean we could lose everything if we disobey?" The sister squeezed his hand. "It means we have to remember what we learned. Choices matter, and we are responsible for our hearts." Moses raised his hand, looking across the sea of faces. "We have walked through deserts where hunger and fear tested us. We have faced giants, not just of flesh, but of doubt and temptation. God's commandments are your shield and your guide. Listen to them, remember them, and follow them faithfully." He let the silence linger, giving space for reflection. Each person felt the weight of the moment, not as fear, but as responsibility. They understood that life was full of choices, and each choice carried the echo of their faith. "Choose life," Moses said softly. "Choose love, choose obedience, choose God. For in these choices, you will find the strength to endure, the courage to rise, and the peace that lasts beyond the wilderness." The crowd bowed their heads, not in despair, but in quiet determination. In the stillness, the wind seemed to whisper through the hills, a reminder that every choice they made would shape not only their journey, but the legacy they would leave behind. The morning sun bathed the hills of Moab in a gentle light, casting long shadows across the faces of the Israelites. Moses stood before them, his eyes shining with a quiet joy. Today, he would speak not of warnings or rules, but of the blessings that come from following God's ways. "My people," Moses began, "God's commandments are not just for guidance. They are a path to life, to joy, to peace. When you obey him, blessings will flow into your lives, not as mere rewards, but as signs of his love." A woman in the crowd lifted her child, whispering, "Will we truly be safe if we follow him?" Moses smiled gently. "Safety is more than protection from harm. It is the calm of heart in storms, the hope that steadies you when the world feels uncertain. God's blessings touch every part of life, your homes, your families, your work, and your hearts." He traced a circle in the dust with his staff. "See the circle? It is like your life. When you keep God at the center, everything else falls into its place. Your children will thrive, your neighbors will be your friends, and even the wilderness will feel like home. Obedience brings peace, not just for today, but for the generations to come." An elder nodded, eyes glistening. "I have walked this path many years, Moses. I have felt God's hand in every trial, every triumph. Your words remind me that faith is alive, not just in miracles, but in everyday life." Moses' voice softened. "Do not forget these blessings, for they are gifts, freely given. And remember, God's love is never-ending. Even when you stray, he waits with open arms. Obedience is not about perfection. It is about returning to him, again and again, with hearts full of trust." The people felt it, the warmth of hope, the light of faith, and the joy that comes when a community walks together in God's ways. For in obeying, they discovered a peace that no hardship could shake, a blessing that would follow them into the promised land and beyond. The sun hung low over the hills of Moab, painting the sky with shades of gold and crimson. Moses stood atop the ridge one last time, his staff in hand, looking at the faces of the people he had guided for decades. His heart was heavy, yet full of hope. "My dear people," he began, his voice carrying across the crowd, "the time has come for me to step aside. I will not enter the promised land with you. But do not be afraid, for God's hand is upon you, and his promises endure forever." He paused, seeing tears well in the eyes of elders and children alike. "Remember the journey we have shared, the hardships, the miracles, the lessons learned in the wilderness. You are strong because of them. You are ready because God has prepared you." A young boy asked, "Moses, who will lead us now?" Moses smiled, kneeling to meet the boy's gaze. "Joshua will lead you, my son. He is faithful, brave, and filled with God's Spirit. Trust him, as you have trusted me, and the Lord will guide your steps." He looked across the crowd, his eyes resting on every face, feeling the weight of love, responsibility, and hope. "Teach your children well. Pass down what you have learned. Share God's love, obey his commands, and walk in his ways. This is the legacy we leave, not just the land we enter, but the hearts we shape, the faith we nurture, and the lives we touch." A soft breeze swept across the plains, rustling the tents and whispering through the olive trees. Moses lifted his staff once more. "Though I go, I am with you in spirit. Though I will not see the land, my prayers follow you. And know this, God's light will never leave you. His covenant is your anchor, his love your guide." The people bowed their heads, some silently weeping, others lifting their voices in quiet prayers of gratitude. In that moment, they understood. The journey was not over, but a new chapter was beginning, a life built on faith, hope, and obedience. Moses turned slowly, taking one last look at the hills, the valleys, and the faces of the people he loved so dearly. His heart whispered a final prayer, that the generations to come would walk in the light, follow God's ways, and remember the story of their journey through the wilderness. And with that, the legacy of Moses, the teachings of God, and the enduring faith of his people stretched forward, like a river flowing steadily toward the promised land.